Hello everyone, welcome to this week's trick section. This is our fifth trick section. In the last section, we talked about a very complicated trick, and this week as well we have a trick that has quite a lot of variations behind it. So let's get started. We have the following setting on the board, and white approaches from the inside with the intention to sort of split black's moyo into halves. Black defends, and now white placed the second line sliding. So this is not very common in the AI time, but it's still a popular move among the amateur players, right? You would usually see professionals just make this attach and honey at C2. That's more common, but the second line sliding is still a very good move. Definitely not going to affect the win or lose of your game. So here black should not play the 3-3 because after he plays 3-3, white just successfully broke his moyo. So what is usually happening is black decides to pincer from the outside, and this is the correct move to play in terms of ideas and stuff. White obviously wants to make a base, so the c3 is excellent to ensure himself the territory and the base. And now black kicks. That is the continuation. It's very consistent with what he wants to do. That's to get the outside and coordinate with these two stones over here. Usually I would just talk about a very interesting aspect before we go into the trick. So usually white plays the block and the black honeys over here. In the old days, white will play the g4 and then black, and we will end up with this old joseki. But as it turns out that AI says that this is completely, it's a very bad outcome for white because black's outside is just a lot stronger than white's corner. So very interesting. AI has brought a lot of changes to the game of Go. This is no longer a joseki. This is just called a bad choice for white, which used to be a very G4 used to be a very popular joseki, but not anymore with AI era. So the correct move for white to play is to actually bump into black. Looks a little bit strange because looks like black gets a really good shape by just blocking, and now white can honey and then black double honeys. At this point, white should go ahead and play somewhere else. Let's say he plays somewhere else to reduce, or he just plays a normal move. Just play elsewhere, wherever is a big place to play. And this is an equal position locally, right? So white seems to be all squeezed on the second line, but eventually white might one day sacrifice these two stones and allow himself to be split into halves for the purpose of destroying black's moyo over here. So white has this choice later on that he can use this against black at some point. But I think more importantly, white got a sente as well. So white's got enough compensation in this region. So this is the AI recommended joseki, that is to bump in and then honey and then play somewhere else. That's the correct variation. this is not the trick we're going to talk about. So here white has a very classical trick. That is this fancy squeeze at e4. So this is a very, very tricky move. And it's definitely a playable move for white as well. The variations that comes after is very complicated, so I'm going to quickly go through some of them. So if black connects, white can just block. When black turns, white can just respond to this. And now as we can see, there's no more way for black to seal white inside because of white's e4 stone. So this is called black sort of fall into a trap that white has set for him. So if black Ataris, white can just Atari and then connect. And as we can see, this black stone is significantly hurt, and then there's no more moyo over here, and on top white has a lot of territory in the corner, extending the territory all the way to the side. This is just not an acceptable outcome for black at all. Maybe a better move for black is to Atari on the bottom, but white can just happily take the stone. Black will follow up with the Atari, white connects, and black will connect himself on the second line. And now white can initiate the attack by squeezing black's group at c8. The result of this variation is not so great for black because first of all, white's corner is temporarily solid, and white can sort of gain momentum over this area by attacking white, by attacking black in this direction. So definitely a good variation for white. Well, I just want to quickly mention that when I say white's corner is temporarily safe, well, so it turns out that white actually has some problems. So you can go back to my very first video on life and death. That was the small pig mouth. It's a bit similar. So if black kills in this way, this is not a big pig mouth, but it's related knowledge. So black tries to connect, hoping white would connect here and then throw it into make a ko. But as it turns out that white can just throwing like this, and then there's absolutely nothing black can do to kill white locally. But and you see why life and death knowledge is so important, and I actually made a series of videos on life and death, is that at this point black has an excellent move that is to play a c1, and now white has no choice but to sort of make this ko happen. So this is a potential problem for white, but not a too serious one. First of all, black needs to follow up on the first line. Now, this is a two-step ko for black. So white can play somewhere else, and then when black goes in, and white can just go ahead and start ko fight. So black needs to spend a move in order for this ko to happen. So white is not too worried about his corner, and black has a lot of insecurities on both sides for both groups. So this is definitely a very, very good outcome for white locally. A bit complicated, but I think as you watch more of my videos, you'll start appreciate that the value of creating insecurities in your opponent's groups. So in conclusion, if black just simply connects, it won't be a great idea. So what about the remaining option, that is to Atari first? White obviously cannot allow this stone to be captured, and now if a black connects, this will be a more intelligent way of playing for black. So the correct response for white, as the person who is setting a trap, is to turn here. So black will obviously have to play the c4, and we keep pushing, and black is forced just tactically to extend down at b4. And now white will make use of his ladder to ladder the stone. And then when black attaries, white will capture the stone. And then black has pretty much no choice but to connect himself at e2. And white ends the variation by completely splitting up at b5. So this is actually close to equal sort of outcome for both sides, but I would say white is definitely slightly better because of this wall over here that has tremendous influence towards his top side. So definitely a satisfactory outcome for white. Note that if black gets greedy and just played a b5 here, white can make use of this weakness over here. So maybe starting the code immediately is not a good idea because white does not really have code threats, but white can go ahead and create code threats. So when black enter into some sort of cutting point situation, like cross-cut situation, white can find himself some big code threats over here, and then initiate the code fight by playing the g2 move. So basically what I'm saying is that black is having a time bomb that can explode at any time, and white can make good use of this time bomb by first creating code threats over here. So this is not going to be, I would say this is very dangerous for black to not fix this weakness. So the correct move for black to play is to actually play e2 and make sure he is solid and all connected. And white ends the variation by playing a very solid b5, forming an excellent wall towards the top side. So this is slightly better for white, and I believe black can definitely do a little bit better than this. So Atari and then connect is probably not the best choice. So what is left is to actually capture white's f3 stone. And now white will Atari, and then black will take the f3 stones. So now if as we can see on the board, there's clearly a very nice c5 move for white. And you might be wondering, right? This black stone obviously cannot run out, so it's dead. You'd be wondering, well, wait a second, isn't this super good for white? But we need to look at the continuation after. Black will extend himself at d6. This is a sente, and then make this really annoying hane at b5. And usually when white blocks at b4, black can make use of this stone over here that is squeezing white's liberty by 1 to make this net work. So now it seems black has a lot of weakness, but because of the liberty problems white is having, it is actually very difficult to break out. So let's say white's best way of breaking out is probably by pushing at e7, and then there's no good follow-up. If white decides to cut at a d7, black can just Atari. This is a very comfortable Atari, and then black has a very nice e8 that is to extend his stone and forming a gigantic moyo over this region. So this model is really it's looking really good, especially with our supporting stone over here. And then white has to spend basically has to spend another move if he wants to completely capture these stones. And then black can go ahead and extend his moyo even towards the top side. So this is definitely an awesome situation for black to be in. So looks like black has some sort of problems, but not really. So another option is for white to cut on top side. But once again, black can just Atari and then extend his stone at e8. And now this is just not a great fight for white. Just because of how many supporting stones black has in this fight. It's very difficult fight for this stone. It's only one versus all these stones. So difficult fight for white moving forward for sure. So it looked like, you know, black had, you know, so many you know, there's a push over here, there's a push over here, and then it turns out just there's no way to really prevent from black stealing white inside. So this is probably an okay variation for white. If you are a very territorial style player, you might appreciate about 10 points you got in the corner. And then if you're really good at invading, you can later on try to invade this moyo. But definitely black has nothing to worry about, right? Look at how this composition on the bottom is working to form a giant moyo. Definitely an awesome moyo black has moving forward. So still playable game for both sides. This is actually one of the main variations for both sides, and yeah, playable. Still, the game will depend on how you play later on, especially when white makes the invasion inside the moyo. One of the possible variations, and the other. And here I want to just quickly introduce a little trick that white can play. To play this trick, you actually just simply attach c5. This is probably the trickiest move that we have, basically among all the tricks I've talked about. So c5 is really tricky. As black, if you don't know what to do, it's really easy to fall for it. So if black just follows the old pattern and try to play this way, turns out that there's no more net anymore because white can just push out here, and this is an Atari. So no way for black to steal white anymore, and this is collapsing for black actually. So what is the correct solution to white's trick? Oh well, so actually it turns out that sometimes the best solution is the simplest solution. That is for black to push at d5. You might look at it and be like, wait a second, when white Ataris isn't capturing e3 and capturing these two stone and Miai situation, but it turns out that Go is such a flexible game. No one has ever told you or commanded you that there's a stone on the board that you cannot give up. So as it turns out that black can now flexibly Atari white on top. And then when white captures, black can Atari again at f5. And if a white connects at e3, black can turn down and capture the c5 stone. So black has a lot of influence towards the top side by building this wall, as well as a very nice potential over here. So turns out the result of this is not ideal for white actually after this Atari over here. If a white decides to play the c4, black can simply just capture the stones. And now this is just a bit difficult. Like if you push, I could just this push doesn't even work right now. So if white goes on to the other side, black can just simply extend. And then if this happens, sure, white's got himself a large corner, but look at what black has, right? This is just really, really scary because of the nuclear center that black has built over here. So this is a very good move moving forward, a very good game moving forward for black. Definitely lead early into the game. So it turns out that this really, really tricky move that you can try out in your casual games comes with a risk, right? If you ever get caught out, then yeah, you have to pay a little bit for playing this c5 move. So not a recommendation for serious tournaments and stuff like that, but you can try this move out just because how tricky it is. It might just give you a lead in your casual games. All right, so that's a very interesting trick that you can try out in your casual games once again. But usually, if you are more serious, you should actually play the d3 move. Black will capture at f3. We already talked about what happens when white attaches at c5. Here, there's a more complicated variation. Is for white to Atari at e3. So and here, if a black just connects, that is fine. But as it turns out that at this point, white will not block at b4 anymore. White will choose to sort of turn at e6, allowing black to extend at b4. White will have to take the stone, and then when white jumps out, and after all this sequence, white can actually, because of this exchange, black has less ice space and white can counterattack white at a k3. And this is just very, very playable for white at this point. So, and also another very important point that I need to make is that locally, this white group is already alive. So if black jumps into the 2-2 point, white can make use of black's shortage of liberty to make himself alive, actually. So this is also a huge difference, right? Your group is secure versus your group it has to run all the time, makes a huge difference. So, and this is all thanks to this e2 stone that white was able to get in exchange. So, so the trick is very complicated. Due to the time constraint, I might not be able to go through every single detail of it. But I would just simply show you the conclusion of this local variation. So as I already explained, that connecting at f3 is okay, but it's a net loss for black locally, right? Like as I have explained before. So black's better choice is probably to push at f5. When white extends at e6, white will make a kima at g7. So this way is a better way for black to play, and the reason is for him to remain very consistent on his idea. And this is very crucial in the game of Go, is to remain very consistent with the idea you have. All the moves that blacks are playing is sort of supporting this moyo. So this is definitely a better way of playing in games. The complication arises when white tries to sort of enclose this entire area as his own territory. Turns out that there will just be a fight over here that is basically looking like this. So now white can Atari and then extend himself out, and then when black turns, white can capture these two stones. Black will Atari, and then white is going to be playing a move over here, and then white captures, and then white will come back and defend himself at d5. So the result of this is actually very, very complicated and hard to judge. But as we can see, if this is actually the setting in the game, this moyo is just looking very scary for black. So this is definitely a very, very playable outcome for black. Despite the fact that white has a lot of territory in the corner, right? So this is just a scary game moving forward, I would say, because you know, I would have a hard time invading this moyo over here. But as black, if white ever decides to come in and you somehow I guess mess up this area, or you just let white live very easily, then what is gonna compensate all of this loss? So very, very scary game moving forward, just because how extreme the circumstances are, right? Black has all these nuclear center over here, and white has a lot of cash over here. So very interesting, and I would say a very, very fun game, and interesting game, and scary game moving forward. And if you like your game to be scary, and you like to play big moyo and the dragon killing games, this is the type of situation you might want to be in as black. So this will be a very, very playable game for black, and this is probably well, this is according to professionals, this is the correct way of countering white's e2 move. Definitely very a deep variation, very, very difficult to memorize, but you can always come back and watch this video and try to memorize, or just maybe settle for an easier variation somewhere in between. Yeah, so this is definitely a fun variation to especially be able to remember it, but for if you just don't want to study as much, maybe this is the variation that you can remember. It's a standard variation. So white gets himself the territory, and black has a very nice netting move to keep expanding on the right side. So this will be this week's trick, is that, and the trick we learned is this fancy squeeze at e4. So definitely try it out in your games. So more tricks that are coming out in the next weeks. If you don't want to miss out on any videos, you should definitely subscribe to my channel to get the updates. And I will see you guys next time.